everybody, and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be talking about the Lancet.com article about COVID-19, and it's called COVID-19 Overcoming the Challenges Faced by Individuals with Autism and Their Families. It says, while the infection rate of coronavirus disease 2019 rises exponentially around the globe, individuals with autism spectrum disorder are being identified as part of a group at higher risk of complications from COVID-19. So just from that intro alone, I'm slightly worried as to why the government thinks we're higher risk. I don't understand where they've got their facts, figures, statistics from. If they could explain that in this article, that would be helpful. Furthermore, autism spectrum disorder is often accompanied by anxiety, dyspraxia, learning disability, epilepsy, Fragile X syndrome, Down syndrome, and immune system alterations. Individuals with autism can have also different types of behavioural problems, including deficits in social communication, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, irritability, and aggression. Such common comorbidities can present additional challenges for individuals to cope during the COVID-19 pandemic, and making it more difficult to receive the true therapies and support that they truly need, and being adjusted to their daily routines. So yeah, just to put that in perspective for you, what support has the government actually put in place for us as people on the spectrum? What has actually been officially said by Boris Johnson? What has officially been said by the UK Labour government? As far as I can see, nothing. And the fact that it's all medical jargon language, it's nothing that has been put into accessible format. So again, I have an issue with this straight off, because it's just not accessible enough. It's not easy to understand or take in. The information is very, very difficult and confusing. So yeah, it says adjusted daily routines. We are asserting that individuals with autism are an important group who might require the additional support during COVID-19 outbreak and future public health emergencies. A common feature of children on the autism spectrum is obsession with routine and disruptions in routine. I'm not being funny. This doesn't just happen to children. This is happening to adults too. It happens to adults like me who are on the spectrum. Just because I'm highly functioning and verbal doesn't mean I'm not being disrupted. It doesn't mean that I'm not able to cope with talking to you and facing the camera. This is a really uneducational guess that they've put. And they actually need to listen to people with autism, not just their families, and actually take on board their opinions regardless if they're verbal or non-verbal. So again, this just really does irritate me. And it says, links to COVID-19 might elicit major emotional and behavioural upheaval, dependent on the severity of the developmental disability that's associated with being on the spectrum. Children on the spectrum might have difficulty comprehending what is going on. Again, this is to do with children as well as adults. We are having difficulty comprehending it right now. We are having difficulty with understanding the changes in routine, why we need to stay indoors, why we're not allowed to associate with people outside, why we're not allowed to go and see family, because it's confusing. The language is just nowhere near good enough. This article is making us sound like a medical label and not a person. So again, it's not person-centered. It's not in language which is understandable or easy to read out, but I'm trying my best to put my opinions as well as the medical opinion forward. And it says, core features of successful educational programs for children on the spectrum include several hours per day of engaged instructions because of COVID-19. Many businesses providing care or special educational programs have closed across the world, either on a voluntary basis or because of a mandatory mandate. These closures mean that individuals with autism spectrum disorder are receiving fewer, if any, crucial therapy hours, e.g. speech, behavioural therapy, occupational therapy, and classroom time than they normally would. The effects on this is a considerable change, both for them and their families and caregivers. With professional and social support reduced because of these circumstances, parents and caregivers will almost certainly encounter an increased frequency and severity of challenging behaviour in their children or adults with autism because of being on the spectrum. Parents of children are going to find it extremely difficult being able to look after their loved ones during this time, because it's changed. They're out of school, they're out of college, they're out of work, because they're not allowed to be socially near people. So again, I can understand how the parents are feeling right now. and it is really difficult for them to cope. So yeah, and it says more clinical trials and systematic reviews have shown that telehealth interventions to result in are promising modest improvements in learning under the circumstances of limited access to in-person services. We're trying to advocate for additional research in this area to develop late health services geared towards people with autism, which could target anything from teletherapy and tele-support. And then it goes on to say there is definitely a need for home-based COVID-19 testing for those with autism spectrum disorder. But hold on a minute, if there is a need for home testing for people on the spectrum, why haven't we been tested? Why have we not been told about this by the UK government? Why has Boris or his opposition not spoken about this in Parliament? Why has it not been brought to the autism community's perspective and outlook? I think this is absolutely outrageous. If we are meant to be getting tested and you say that we're higher priority and that if we come down with a physical illness we're more higher risk to develop COVID, so what are you doing to help us, for one? And you say about we need support. And it says allowing caregivers to remain with individuals with autism spectrum disorder while they receive health services will facilitate better patient-centred care and family-centred care. Although this is only a suggestion that is inconsistent with many policies now put in place in the healthcare facility, both healthcare providers and individuals with autism might benefit substantially if the risk of disruptive behaviour can be reduced. Many current hospitals have limited the number of visitors in an attempt to curb the transmission of the virus. So again, people with autism, if they are admitted to hospital, they're not going to be able to be with the family. So again, it's going to cause communication breakdown, meltdowns, physical meltdowns, emotional meltdowns, and it will cause a problem in how you can best treat them. The environment in emergency departments can impede care for children or adults with autism and their parents. For example, waiting rooms have been described by parents as overwhelming and noisy for those on the spectrum, especially when a child comes to the emergency department during the peak time. The pace and intensity of the emergency department can be very distressing for a child or adult on the spectrum as they're having their emergency treatment. Again, could this not be a reasonable adjustment? Could we not get them into a quieter room or somewhere where they're away from the public so they're not overwhelmed, they're not going to get stressed, they're not going to have a meltdown, they're not going to scare everyone else who is in the hospital waiting room to be seen? Could we not just adjust our care structures so that we are more adjusted for people on the spectrum? So, yeah, it says department experiences indicate that openness to considering the child's autism-specific care needs was appreciated. Challenges faced also include a lack of staff knowledge about autism, lengthy wait times, insufficient engagement of parents in case planning, and heightened sensory concerns as a result of the environmental stimulation within the emergency department. Again, this comes down to reasonable adjustments. It comes down to being able to cope, being able to be trained in autism, and having someone there at the hospital, at the doctor's surgery, to be there to be the autism specialist on call. They should have someone like this on call 24/7 because there is a high percentage that will be having autism come through their doors, and that should already be something that's considered under the Autism Act of 2009. It should be a mandatory reasonable adjustment to make treatment and their person-centred care more beneficial. That should be something that's already put in place by the government. I don't understand why it's not. So yeah, that's just something else that I should mention about that. And then next it says, to combat these challenges, parents or caregivers can help individuals with autism to discuss their symptoms with the healthcare worker and provide context for the patient's behaviour, needs and communication. To this end, we strongly recommend hospitals and other healthcare settings to make exceptions that allow caregivers to stay with them for the entirety of the visit or hospital admission. Again, this can be a problem because if you're with someone with autism and they get stressed out, anxious, they feel ill, or they can't communicate because they're non-verbal, this is going to cause a problem because it's about the patient, and again that could cause a lot of problems because if you're having to communicate for your child or adult on the spectrum, it can cause problems such as Makaton or British Sign Language or American Sign Language if you're in the USA. Again, it comes down to the way that you best communicate with them. If that means getting alternative communication methods on board, like say a language interpreter, then many things will have to change. It says parents should also be encouraged to develop legal documents related to guardianship that include multiple alternatives to the case the designated guardian becomes incapacitated and unable to provide their care and support. Numbers of adults with autism seeking support from healthcare services will increase. So again, that means that if the patient falls ill as well as the parent, what care is put in place for them. And again, like I've just touched on, it says the population also requires the support of a family caregiver or chaperone in hospital and the adjustment of COVID-19 specific rules to their needs. In some adults with autism, they have a cognitive level of understanding which might not match their age, and healthcare providers might need to adapt the approach to better understand. Again, if they're under stress, if they're underfunded, if they're not having enough time to have one-on-one patient care, that's going to cause a problem in itself. So it's not easy to already have the patient with you. And it says virtually every healthcare system, and especially during this COVID-19, a medical provider, we should do our very best to avoid any unintentional discrimination. We must try to ensure that our vulnerable patients receive some standard of care afforded to the same as our neurotypical patients. Again, you're making us sound that we're a medical label. You're not making us sound that we're human, and that really does frustrate me because we are humans. Just because we have autism does not mean we don't understand you. We do want to understand you. And yeah, it's just about having communication and making sure that you make the place accessible for us, regardless if we have autism, anxiety, or any mental health kind of issue. Again, this article I'm not very impressed with because it has basically treated us like a medical label, and I agree that this could be rewritten. It could be made more accessible for us. Also, I just feel that they've really made us sound like we're a problem, and we're not. And instead of us just being someone who's a medical label or that we are non-communicative, get to know us, get to support us, understand our needs, treat us as a human. Don't just treat us like we're a patient, we're in, we're out, and that you don't, because you're not understanding us, you're not giving us the time, the space, you're not treating us as someone who is severely ill and could have sensory overload, physical meltdowns, depression meltdowns. Get to know us before you get rid of us out of the hospital or you have to move us somewhere else because you're getting overwhelmed. It's just about treating the person as a patient and a human, not just the medical rush or the medical label. Or make the medical information more accessible, please. The medical information you put out there is so confusing, overwhelming, it's stressful. Just put it in a form that's accessible and make sure we're able to understand what's being done to us, explain it, let us ask questions. And yeah, I hope this video has been helpful. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye!